My knuckles hurt from knocking so hard on the massive wooden door. The cold metal of the lion head knocker bit into my palm as I slammed it again and again, desperation drowning out any sense of self-preservation. Behind me, Sophia trembled against the stone pillar, her 14-year-old frame looking impossibly small in her school uniform. Blood spattered the hem of her skirt, not hers, never hers. But the image of it made my stomach turn. "Please," I whispered to no one, to the door, to God if he was listening. "Please open." I had no plan beyond this moment. No backup, no phone battery left to call for help. Just the address I'd memorized months ago when a regular customer at the bar had mentioned it in passing. The Ravalini estate, where the most dangerous man in the city lived, where I hoped that danger might protect us instead of destroy us. Security lights suddenly flooded the entrance, blinding me. I heard the mechanical whir of cameras adjusting, focusing on our faces. Sophia made a small sound of fear and pressed closer to my back. My younger sister hadn't spoken a single word since I'd found her 20 minutes ago, running down the street 3 blocks from her school, eyes vacant with shock. "We shouldn't be here," she'd finally whispered when I'd pulled her into an alley to catch our breath. "Mia, they saw me. They know I saw them." That was all she'd managed before her voice broke entirely. The door swung open with surprising silence for something so heavy. A man stood in the entrance, and even in my panic, I recognized him immediately. Luca Ravellini. I'd served him drinks dozens of times at the club where I worked. Always bourbon neat, always with a $20 tip, always with eyes that seemed to catalog everything around him. He looked different now. At the club, he wore expensive suits and controlled charm. Here, at what had to be past midnight, he wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. But his eyes held that same sharp awareness, now focused entirely on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Mia." He said my name like a statement, not a question. From the club. I was surprised he remembered. Surprised he knew my name at all. "Mr. Ravalini, I'm sorry to come here like this, but I didn't know where else to go." The words tumbled out too fast. "My sister. She witnessed something tonight, and the men who did it, they're looking for her, and I just need somewhere safe for one night, just until tomorrow. Please." His gaze moved past me to Sophia, taking in her blood-stained uniform, her trembling hands, the hollow shock in her blue eyes. Something changed in his expression. Not softness exactly, but a shift toward something more human beneath the cold assessment. "Come inside." He stepped back, creating space for us to enter. Quickly, I didn't hesitate. I pulled Sophia through the doorway into a foyer that belonged in a museum. Marble floors stretched before us, reflecting the light from a crystal chandelier overhead. My worn sneakers squeaked against the pristine stone, leaving faint marks of dirt and desperation. Luca closed the door and engaged 3 separate locks with practiced efficiency. Then he touched something on his phone, and I heard the subtle sound of additional security measures activating around us. "Who's looking for her?" His voice remained calm, but I caught the edge beneath it. This was a man accustomed to threats, to violence, to making rapid decisions that others couldn't afford to question. "I don't know their names." I kept my arm around Sophia's shoulders, feeling her shake against me. "She was leaving debate club late. There was a man in the alley behind her school. She saw them kill him. 3 men. They turned around before she could run. One of them had a tattoo on his neck, a green dragon with red eyes." Luca's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The Triad. The way he said it made my blood run colder. I'd heard rumors about different criminal organizations in the city, whispered conversations between customers at the bar who thought I wasn't paying attention. The Triad was one of the names that made people lower their voices even further. "They chased her?" Luca asked. Sophia made a small sound. I answered for her. "She ran. She's fast, track team. She managed to lose them in the crowd near the subway, but I don't think for long. They were searching the streets when I found her. I couldn't take her home. Our apartment, they might know where we live. Schools have addresses on file. And if they're organized enough to..." I couldn't finish the sentence. The implications were too terrifying. You came here because you thought I could protect her. It wasn't a question. I met his dark eyes directly, forcing myself not to look away, despite every instinct screaming that staring at a man like Luca Ravellini was dangerous. I came here because I had nowhere else to go, and because I hoped you might understand what it means when bad people want to hurt someone innocent. For a long moment, he said nothing. He studied me with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed, like he could see past my fear to something deeper. Then his attention shifted to Sophia again, taking in the way she couldn't stop trembling, the way her fingers clutched at my jacket. "How old are you?" he asked her gently. Sophia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I felt her panic rising. "She's 14, I answered. "She's in shock. I don't think she can talk right now." Luca nodded once, a single sharp movement. Then he pulled his phone out again and spoke into it in a tone that expected immediate obedience. "Marco, I need a perimeter check on the property. Possible Triad movement in the city tonight. Yes, now. And get Romano up here." He ended the call and looked at me. "You'll stay tonight, both of you. Tomorrow we'll reassess the situation and determine next steps." Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. "Thank you. I can't. I don't know how to thank you. You can start by telling me exactly what your sister saw." He gestured toward a doorway leading deeper into the house. "But first, she needs to get cleaned up and into something that isn't covered in blood." I followed him through rooms that spoke of wealth I couldn't begin to comprehend. Everything was dark wood and leather, expensive art on the walls, furniture that looked both comfortable and prohibitively costly. We climbed a wide staircase to the second floor, where he led us down a hallway lined with closed doors. He opened one, revealing a bedroom larger than our entire apartment. A king bed with navy sheets occupied the center, flanked by matching nightstands. Windows overlooked dark grounds that I could barely see through the security lighting. "There's a bathroom through there." Luca pointed to another door. "I'll have someone bring clothes and toiletries. You'll be safe here tonight." Sophia finally moved, pulling away from me to sink onto the edge of the bed. She stared at her hands, at the blood still under her fingernails from when she'd fallen while running. "The man they killed," I said quietly. "Do you know who he was?" If it was the alley behind Preston Academy, then yes. Luca's expression was grim. "District Attorney Marcus Webb. He's been prosecuting a money laundering case against several Triad operations. This was either sending a message or eliminating a problem. Probably both." My stomach dropped. "Then they'll definitely want to make sure Sophia can't identify them." "Yes." He didn't soften it. Didn't try to make it less frightening. I appreciated that more than I could express. "Which is why you're going to tell me everything she remembers. Every detail. While it's still fresh. Then I'll decide how to handle this." The way he said handle made it clear he meant something far more permanent than calling the police. A knock on the door interrupted us. A large man entered, carrying what looked like folded clothing. He had the same dangerous awareness as Luca, the same way of moving that suggested violence was always an option. "Romano," Luca said by way of introduction. "He'll be stationed outside this room tonight. No one gets in without my explicit permission." Romano nodded at me, his face impassive. He set the clothes on a chair near the door and left without speaking. "Get her cleaned up," Luca told me. "I'll be back in 15 minutes. We'll talk then." He left before I could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. I heard him speaking to Romano in the hallway, too low for me to make out the words. Sophia hadn't moved from the bed. I knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in mine. "Hey," I said softly. "Look at me." Her blue eyes finally focused on my face. She looked so young, younger than her 14 years, scared in a way that made my chest ache. "We're safe tonight," I told her, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Mr. Ravalini is going to help us figure this out. But I need you to try to remember everything you saw, okay? Every detail might be important." "I don't want to remember," she whispered. "Mia, there was so much blood. And the sound when they—" She couldn't finish. "I know." I squeezed her hands. "But those men are dangerous, and the only way to stop them is to remember. Can you do that for me?" She nodded slowly, tears finally breaking free to stream down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I got us into this." "Don't." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her sob against my shoulder. "Don't you dare apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. They did, and we're going to make sure they pay for it." I wasn't sure I believed that. I wasn't sure of anything except that I'd just put our lives in the hands of a man whose power came from the same darkness that was now hunting my sister. But I'd made my choice when I knocked on that door. Now I had to trust that Luca Ravellini's protection was worth whatever price it would eventually cost. After getting Sophia into the shower and into clean clothes that were far too expensive for sleepwear, I heard another knock. Luca entered carrying a tray with tea and what looked like cookies. The domesticity of it seemed wrong coming from him. "She should try to eat something," he said, setting the tray on the nightstand. "Sugar helps with shock." Sophia was curled up on the bed now, wrapped in a blanket despite the room's warmth. She looked at the cookies but didn't reach for them. Luca pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, his movements unhurried. He didn't tower over her, didn't crowd her space. Instead, he waited until she looked at him voluntarily. "My name is Luca," he said, his voice gentler than I'd heard it before. "You're Sophia, correct?" She nodded slightly. "Sophia, I need you to tell me what you saw tonight. I know it's difficult, but the men who did this need to face consequences, and the only way that happens is if we know exactly who they are. Can you help me with that?" She glanced at me. I nodded encouragingly. "There were 3 of them," Sophia began, her voice barely audible. "The man, the victim, he was already on the ground when I came around the corner. One of them was standing over him, tall, dark jacket. He was the one with the tattoo. Green dragon on his neck, going up behind his ear. The dragon's eyes were red, and it had its mouth open like it was breathing fire." Luca's attention never wavered. "Good. That's very good. What about the other 2? One was shorter, heavy build. He had a gun. The other one was wearing a suit, like he'd come from an office or something. He was the one who saw me first." She swallowed hard. "He pointed at me and said something in another language. Not Spanish, something else. Mandarin, probably," Luca supplied. "Then what happened?" "I ran. The one with the tattoo started after me, but I cut through the construction site and came out on Franklin Street. There were people there, lots of them leaving the theater. I think that's the only reason they didn't catch me immediately. Did any of them get close enough to touch you?" "No. I'm fast." A hint of pride crept into her voice before fear swallowed it again. "But they saw my face clearly, and they know I saw them." Luca leaned back slightly, processing. "The blood on your uniform. How did that happen?" "I fell when I was running through the construction site. My hands landed in... There was blood on the ground. From the victim, I think. It hadn't dried yet." The clinical way she described it broke my heart. No 14-year-old should have to speak about murder with such careful precision. "You did well," Luca told her. "The details you remembered will be useful. Now I need you to rest. Tomorrow we'll talk more about keeping you safe, but tonight, you're protected. No one can reach you here." Sophia looked at him with something close to hope. "You promise?" He met her gaze steadily. "I promise, and I don't break my promises." There was something in the way he said it that made me believe him completely. This was a man whose word meant something, even in a world built on lies and violence. Luca stood and gestured for me to follow him to the door. Before leaving, he paused and looked back at Sophia. "Try to sleep," he said. "If you can't, there are books on the shelf, and the television remote is in the nightstand drawer. Romano is right outside if you need anything." We stepped into the hallway. Romano was indeed stationed there, standing with his back to the wall where he could see both directions of the corridor. "Your sister is brave," Luca said quietly. "Most adults couldn't have handled what she just described with that much clarity. She's always been stronger than she looks." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly feeling the weight of the night crashing down. What happens now? Now I make some calls and confirm what we're dealing with. The Triad doesn't move without purpose. If they killed Webb tonight, it's part of something larger. I need to know what. And Sophia, they'll keep looking for her. They will. He didn't sugarcoat it. Which means she can't go home. Neither of you can. Not until this is resolved. The reality of that statement hit me hard. Our apartment, my job, Sophia's school, our entire lives upended in one terrible moment of wrong place, Wrong time. I don't have money for a hotel, I admitted. And even if I did, they'd find us eventually. Wouldn't they? Yes. The Triad has resources and connections throughout the city. They'd locate you within days, possibly hours if they're motivated. Then what am I supposed to do? The desperation in my voice was embarrassing. But I was past caring about pride. Luca studied me for a long moment. You stay here, both of you. Tomorrow we'll discuss longer-term arrangements. But tonight, this is the safest place in the city for your sister. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. His expression was unreadable. Get some rest, Mia. We'll talk more in the morning. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The Triad operates through fear and information. They'll be looking for witnesses, checking emergency rooms, police reports, anywhere a scared teenage girl might have turned up tonight. By coming here instead, you bought yourselves time. That was smart. I didn't feel smart. I felt terrified. Fear and intelligence aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes fear makes the best decisions. He nodded once. Good night. I watched him walk down the hallway, his stride confident even at this late hour. Then I returned to the bedroom where my sister was finally falling asleep, still wrapped in a blanket that cost more than my monthly rent. I settled into the chair Luca had vacated, unable to imagine sleeping in that massive bed while Sophia was so fragile. Through the window, I could see security lights illuminating the grounds, and shadows moving as Luca's men patrolled the perimeter. We were safe tonight. That's what he'd promised, and I chose to believe him. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new decisions, new dangers. But tonight, for the first time since I'd found Sophia running down the street with blood on her clothes and terror in her eyes, I allowed myself to breathe. Sometime around 3 a.m, I heard the door open quietly. Luca entered carrying blankets, moving with surprising silence for someone his size. He noticed I was still awake. I thought you might need these, he said, offering them. I took them gratefully, wrapping one around my shoulders. Thank you for everything. He glanced at Sophia, sleeping fitfully on the bed. She having nightmares? Off and on. Every time she starts to really sleep, she jerks awake. Without a word, Luca moved to the chair on the other side of the bed and sat down. He didn't touch Sophia, didn't speak. He simply sat there, a solid presence in the darkness. And somehow, with him there, Sophia's sleep finally deepened. Her breathing evened out. The tension left her small body. I watched this dangerous man sit vigil over my traumatized sister, and something shifted in my understanding of who Luca Ravellini actually was beneath the reputation and the power. Maybe we'd be okay. Maybe he really would keep his promise. Maybe I'd just made the best decision of my life. Or the worst. Only tomorrow would tell. Morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains, soft and golden, completely at odds with the nightmare of the previous night. I woke with my neck stiff from sleeping in the chair, blanket tangled around my legs. The other chair where Luca had sat was empty now. He must have left sometime before dawn. Sophia was still asleep, curled on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek. She looked peaceful for the first time in hours. I didn't want to wake her, didn't want to bring her back to the reality of what we were facing. A quiet knock preceded the door opening. A woman in her 50s entered carrying a tray with coffee, juice, and what smelled like fresh pastries. She had kind eyes and moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd worked in service for years. Good morning, she said softly, setting the tray on the table near the window. Mr. Ravalini thought you might be hungry. I'm Teresa. I manage the household. Thank you. My voice came out rough from lack of sleep. That's very thoughtful. She smiled. There's a bathroom down the hall if you'd like to freshen up. Second door on the left. I brought some clothes that might fit you both. Nothing fancy, just comfortable things. I glanced at the folded items she'd placed on the dresser. Jeans, soft sweaters, undergarments still in packages. Everything practical and in sizes that would probably work. Mr. Ravalini asked me to let you know he'll be in his office when you're ready to talk. Teresa continued. No rush. Let the girl sleep as long as she needs. After she left, I poured myself coffee and stood by the window. The grounds stretched out below, Manicured lawns giving way to tall stone walls topped with security measures that were probably invisible from this distance but definitely present. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. Sophia stirred around 8, blinking awake with momentary confusion before memory crashed back. I saw it happen. The return of fear and grief to her expression. "Hey," I said gently, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like last night really happened." She sat up slowly, pushing hair out of her face. "I hoped it was a nightmare." "I know." I handed her a glass of juice. "Drink this, then we'll figure out what comes next." She took it mechanically. "What is next?" "We can't stay here forever." I didn't have an answer to that. We ate breakfast mostly in silence, both of us avoiding the questions that hung between us. After we'd showered and changed into the clothes Teresa had provided, I couldn't delay the inevitable any longer. "Mr. Ravalini wants to talk to us," I said. "Are you ready for that?" Sophia nodded, though she looked anything but ready. We found Romano still stationed outside our door. He straightened when he saw us. "Morning. I'll take you to the boss." He led us through the house in daylight, and I saw details I'd missed in last night's panic. Original artwork on the walls, books in Italian and English lining built-in shelves, fresh flowers in vases that probably cost more than my car. This was old money mixed with new power, tradition wrapped around danger. Luca's office was on the first floor, behind heavy wooden doors that Romano knocked on before opening. The room beyond was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the back gardens. Luca sat behind a massive desk, talking on his phone in what I assumed was Italian. He gestured for us to enter and sit, wrapping up his conversation with a few clipped sentences. "Good morning." He set his phone aside and focused on us completely. "You both look better. Did you sleep?" "Some," I answered. "Thank you for the clothes and breakfast, and for last night. For all of it." He acknowledged this with a slight nod. "We need to discuss your situation. I've spent the morning gathering information, and what I learned isn't encouraging." My stomach tightened. "Tell us." "The Triad has put out word that they're looking for a blonde teenage girl who was in the area of Preston Academy last night. They're offering $20,000 for information leading to her location. They've sent people to hospitals, urgent care centers, anywhere a frightened witness might have gone. They're being thorough." Sophia made a small sound. I reached over and took her hand. "The man who was killed," Luca continued, District Attorney Marcus Webb, was scheduled to present evidence next week in a major money laundering case. His testimony would have connected 3 Triad front businesses to their operations. With him gone, the prosecution's case is significantly weakened. "So they killed him to stop the trial," I said. "Yes. And now your sister is the only person who can identify the men who did it, which makes her an unacceptable risk to them." The clinical way he explained it made the danger feel more real somehow. This wasn't paranoia or overreaction. This was calculated threat assessment from someone who understood violence intimately. "What do we do?" I asked. "We can't go home, I get that. But we have lives, jobs, school. I can't just disappear. And Sophia has exams next week." Luca leaned back in his chair. "Exams are irrelevant if she's not alive to take them. Let me be clear about what you're facing. The Triad will find you if you try to resume normal life. They have resources and patience. It might take days or weeks, but they will find you. And when they do, they won't just kill Sophia. They'll kill you too, to eliminate any possibility of testimony." The bluntness of it stole my breath. Sophia's hand tightened in mine. "So what? We just run? Change our names and hide forever?" The frustration in my voice was sharp. "That's not a life. No, it's survival. But I'm offering you an alternative." He stood and moved to the window, hands in his pockets. "You stay under my protection. Not just for a night, but until this situation is resolved." "Resolved how?" "That depends on several factors. The Triad's next moves. What the police investigation uncovers. Whether your sister's testimony becomes valuable enough to warrant official protection." He turned back to face us. "But in the immediate term, you need somewhere safe to live, and a way to earn money that doesn't put you in public view where you can be recognized." "I have to work," I insisted. "I can't just live off your charity." Something flickered in his expression. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering employment. I own a restaurant in the suburbs, Ristorante Bella Vista. It needs a manager, someone who can handle suppliers, scheduling, customer relations. You worked as a bartender, which means you understand service industry operations. The job is yours if you want it. I stared at him. You're offering me a job? Just like that? I'm offering you a way to stay off the Triad's radar while still maintaining independence. The restaurant isn't in the city proper. It caters to a different clientele, quieter, more family-oriented. You'd be much less visible there than at a downtown club. It made a strange kind of sense, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was trading one form of dependence for another. And Sophia, there's a safe house in the same area. Secure property with 24-hour security. You'll both stay there. Sophia can continue her education through online programs until it's safe for her to return to regular school. Sophia spoke up for the first time. What about my friends? My track team? I can't just disappear without anyone knowing why. Luca's expression softened slightly. I understand that's difficult, but your friends can't know where you are. The Triad will question them, threaten them if necessary. The less they know, the safer they'll be. This is insane, I said, standing abruptly. You're talking about uprooting our entire lives, moving to some safe house, hiding like criminals when we didn't do anything wrong. You're right. You didn't do anything wrong. His voice remained calm. But the Triad doesn't care about right and wrong. They care about eliminating threats. And right now, your sister is a threat to their operations and their freedom. I paced to the window, looking out at the peaceful gardens. Everything felt surreal. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern was making rent and helping Sophia study for her biology exam. Now we were discussing safe houses and hit lists. I need to think about this, I said finally. Of course. Take the day. But Mia, he waited until I looked at him. I need you to understand something. I don't make offers like this lightly. And I don't make them to people I don't believe can handle the situation. You came to my door last night because you knew it was the smart play. Don't second-guess that instinct now. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Excuse me. I need to take this. He answered in Italian again, his tone shifting to something harder. The conversation was brief, and when he ended the call, his expression was grim. The Triad just sent someone to your apartment building. They spoke with your landlord. My blood ran cold. Did they get in? No. Your landlord told them he hadn't seen you in 2 days, which is apparently true based on your work schedule. But they left contact information and asked him to call if you returned. They know where we live. Sophia's voice was small. They've known since last night, Luca said. School records would have given them your address within hours. This confirms they're actively hunting you. I felt the walls closing in. Every option, every potential escape route was being cut off. Fine. We'll take your offer. The safe house, the job, all of it. But I need some things from our apartment. Photos, documents, my laptop. Give me a list. I'll have someone collect everything and bring it to you. You're not going back there. I can't just abandon everything we own. You can, and you will. His tone left no room for argument. Your belongings are replaceable. You and your sister are not. I wanted to fight him on it, but the rational part of my brain knew he was right. Going back to the apartment would be suicide. There's something else you should know, Luca said. I'm having my people reach out to contacts in the police department. There's a prosecutor who might be interested in Sophia's testimony. If we can arrange official protection through the district attorney's office, it would give you more options long-term. You have contacts in the DA's office? I shouldn't have been surprised. I have contacts everywhere. Some owe me favors. This is how the city works, Mia. Power is built on relationships and leverage. It was a glimpse into his world. And I wasn't sure I wanted to see more, but I was already in it now, whether I wanted to be or not. Teresa appeared at the door. Sir, the car is ready. Luca nodded. Thank you. To us, he said. I'm having you move to the safe house this morning. You'll have privacy, security, and everything you need. Tomorrow we'll discuss the restaurant position in more detail. Everything was moving so fast. Too fast. But when I looked at Sophia, saw the fear still present in her eyes, I knew we didn't have the luxury of time. "Okay," I agreed quietly. "We'll go." The safe house turned out to be a modest 2-story home in a residential neighborhood 40 minutes outside the city. Nothing about it screamed security, but I noticed the reinforced windows, the subtle cameras, the way the 2 men who arrived before us did a thorough sweep before allowing us inside. The interior was comfortable without being ostentatious. Furnished living room, updated kitchen, 3 bedrooms upstairs. Someone had stocked the refrigerator and pantries with groceries. Fresh flowers sat on the dining table. "It's nice," Sophia said, exploring the space with cautious curiosity. "Weird, but nice." I understood what she meant. It felt temporary and permanent at the same time. A place to exist, but not to live. One of the security guards, a quiet man named Vincent, explained the protocols. "Don't open the door for anyone we didn't recognize. Keep the curtains closed after dark. If we needed anything, call the number programmed into the phones they provided." After they left, Sophia and I stood in the kitchen, both of us at a loss for what to do next. "Are we really going to stay here?" she asked. "For now, until we figure out something better." What if there isn't anything better? What if this is just our life now? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound like a lie. That evening, Luca arrived with boxes containing our belongings from the apartment. I hadn't expected him to bring them personally, had assumed he'd send someone. But he carried in 3 boxes himself, setting them carefully in the living room. "Everything on your list," he said. "Plus some additional items I thought you might want. Photo albums, your sister's track medals, things like that." I opened the top box and found my mother's jewelry case, the one piece of her I'd kept after she died. I hadn't even thought to put it on the list. "How did you know?" My voice came out thick. "Teresa helped identify what might be important. She has good instincts about these things." I looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd thought to save my dead mother's jewelry. "Thank you, really, for all of this." He nodded. "Sophia's in her room?" "Yeah, she's been drawing." "Drawing what?" "The men from last night. She said it helps her remember details." Interest sharpened his expression. "May I see?" I called Sophia down. She came reluctantly, carrying a sketch pad. When she showed Luca the drawings, his reaction was immediate and intense. She'd captured 3 faces with remarkable detail. The man with the dragon tattoo. The heavy-set man with hard eyes. The one in the suit who'd spotted her first. "These are excellent," Luca said. "Very detailed. Would you be willing to keep working on them? Try to add anything else you remember? Clothing details, scars, anything distinctive?" Sophia looked uncertain. "I guess, if it helps." "It will. Very much." He handed the sketchpad back carefully. "You have real talent, Sophia." A hint of pride touched her face before fading back to worry. After she returned upstairs, Luca turned to me. "Those drawings could be valuable. If we can identify the men, it gives us leverage." "Leverage for what?" "For keeping you safe. For resolving this situation in a way that doesn't require you to hide forever." He moved toward the door. "I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the restaurant position. In the meantime, try to rest. You're safe here." After he left, I unpacked our belongings, trying to make the safe house feel less temporary. But every item I placed, every photo I set on a shelf, felt like admitting this was real. We were in hiding. Our lives had been reduced to boxes in a borrowed house, protected by a man whose power came from the same darkness that threatened us. Sophia came downstairs as I was finishing. She held up her sketchpad. I remembered something else. The tattoo guy had a scar on his left hand, between his thumb and first finger, shaped like a crescent moon. I pulled her into a hug. "That's good. That's really good." "Mia?" Her voice was muffled against my shoulder. "Do you think we'll ever go home?" I held her tighter, unable to give her the answer she wanted, because the truth was, I didn't know if home existed anymore, or if it ever would again. 2 weeks had passed since we'd moved into the safe house, and I was beginning to understand what Luca had meant about routine being its own form of security. Every morning at 7, I drove the 15 miles to Ristorante Bella Vista, a charming Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet shopping district. A nondescript sedan stayed 2 cars back the entire way. Different driver, different vehicle depending on the day. Close enough to keep me alive, far enough to let me pretend I was simply commuting. Every evening, I returned to Sophia, to homework and therapy appointments, and the careful reconstruction of a life that felt both foreign and familiar. The restaurant had been struggling before I arrived, not failing exactly, but coasting on reputation without real attention to detail. The previous manager had left suddenly, something about family issues that no one wanted to discuss. I suspected Luca had arranged the opening specifically for me, but I chose not to ask. Pride only mattered if you had the luxury of options. My first day had been overwhelming. Staff who clearly wondered who this newcomer was and why the owner trusted her with his business. Suppliers who tested my knowledge and authority. A kitchen that ran on organized chaos and the head chef's temperamental genius. But I'd worked in service long enough to understand the rhythms, to know when to push and when to listen. By the end of the first week, I'd reorganized the inventory system, renegotiated contracts with 2 suppliers who'd been overcharging, and implemented a new reservation system that reduced wait times. The staff stopped questioning my presence and started asking my opinion. The chef, a large man named Antonio, who intimidated everyone, actually smiled when I complimented his ossobuco. Luca had visited twice that first week, ostensibly to check on operations, but really, I suspected, to see if I'd sink or swim. He'd watched me handle a difficult customer with diplomacy, negotiate with a wine distributor over pricing, and calm Antonio down when a delivery arrived late. Each time, I'd caught him observing me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Approval, maybe. Or calculation. "You're good at this," he'd said after the second visit, standing in the office as I reviewed the week's numbers. "I like solving problems, making things work better than they did before." I'd glanced up from the ledger. "Why does that surprise you?" "It doesn't. But knowing someone is capable and watching them prove it are different things." There was weight behind his words that I didn't fully understand yet, but I felt it, the shift in how he looked at me. Not as a woman he was helping, but as someone who belonged in his world on her own merit. Sophia's adjustment had been harder. Online classes couldn't replace the social interaction she craved, and therapy sessions dredged up trauma she wanted to bury. But her psychologist, Dr. Sarah Hawthorne, was patient and skilled at helping Sophia process what she'd witnessed, without being consumed by it. The drawings continued. Sophia had filled an entire sketch pad with increasingly detailed portraits of the 3 men. She'd remembered the heavy-set man had a gold chain, that the one in the suit wore expensive cufflinks with some kind of symbol. Every session with Dr. Hawthorne seemed to unlock new details, and Sophia transferred them to paper with careful precision. "It helps," she'd explained one evening, while working on a particularly difficult angle of the dragon tattoo. "When I draw them, they're just shapes and shadows, not real people who could hurt us." I'd hugged her then, grateful for whatever mechanism was helping her cope. Luca had started visiting the safe house more frequently, always with plausible reasons. Checking security, reviewing Sophia's drawings, discussing restaurant business that couldn't wait until morning. But the visits stretched longer each time, and the excuses grew thinner. One evening, he arrived as I was making dinner. Pasta with vegetables. Nothing fancy, but better than the takeout we'd been living on. Sophia was upstairs on a video call with Dr. Hawthorne, their twice-weekly session. "Smells good," Luca said, entering the kitchen without invitation. He'd grown comfortable here, shedding some of the formality he maintained everywhere else. Just pasta. Nothing like what Antonio makes. Antonio is a professional. This is better. I glanced at him surprised. How is home cooking better than restaurant quality? Because it's made for specific people, not anonymous customers. There's intention behind it. He leaned against the counter, watching me stir the sauce. My mother used to say you could taste the difference between food made with care and food made with obligation. It was the first time he'd mentioned his mother. In 2 weeks of increasing familiarity, Luca had remained carefully opaque about his personal history. I knew the public facts, the things anyone could find with a quick search. But the private details, the human moments behind the reputation, those he guarded closely. Is she still alive? Your mother? No. She died when I was 23. Heart attack. Fast, at least. She didn't suffer long. The matter-of-fact delivery didn't hide the old grief underneath. I wanted to ask more, but sensed the door closing as quickly as it had opened. Sophia came downstairs then, rescuing us both from the weight of the conversation. She brightened when she saw Luca, and I'd noticed that happening more often. She sought his presence, relaxed when he was around in a way she didn't with the security guards, or even with me sometimes. "How was your session?" he asked her. "Okay. Dr. Hawthorne says I'm making progress." Sophia grabbed a soda from the refrigerator. "She thinks the drawings are helping with processing, which is good because I remembered something else today." "What did you remember?" "The guy in the suit. He had a watch. Really expensive looking, with a black face and gold hands. And there were marks on it, scratches, like he'd worn it a long time." Luca's attention sharpened. "That's excellent detail, Sophia. Can you add it to the drawing?" "Already did." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of the updated sketch. He studied it carefully. "May I send this to someone?" Sophia looked uncertain. "Who?" "A contact who might be able to identify these men based on the details you've provided. The more we know about who they are, the better we can protect you." She glanced at me. I nodded, and she agreed. Luca immediately forwarded the image, typing a message I couldn't see. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. We ate at the kitchen table, conversation flowing easily between updates about Sophia's schoolwork, funny stories about restaurant customers, and Luca's dry observations about city politics. It felt almost normal, like we were a family instead of 3 people thrown together by violence and necessity. After dinner, Sophia disappeared upstairs to work on homework, leaving Luca and me to handle dishes. I washed while he dried, falling into an easy rhythm that suggested we'd done this dozens of times instead of just once before. "She's doing better," he observed, putting away a plate. "Less fearful than 2 weeks ago. The routine helps." And feeling safe, I handed him another dish, our fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected warmth up my arm. "You're good with her, patient." I didn't expect that. "Why not?" "Because patient isn't exactly the adjective people use to describe you." He smiled slightly. "People see what I want them to see. Power requires a certain reputation. And what do you want me to see?" The question came out before I could stop it. Too personal, too direct. But Luca didn't deflect. He set down the towel and turned to face me fully. The truth, whatever that means. We stood close in the small kitchen, the air between us suddenly charged with awareness I'd been trying to ignore. He was an attractive man, that was undeniable. But attraction felt dangerous when combined with dependence, with the power imbalance that defined our situation. "Mia," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Whatever he'd been about to say was cut off by his phone buzzing insistently. He checked it, and his expression went cold. Motion sensors on the north perimeter. "Someone's approaching the property." Fear spiked through me. "The Triad?" "I don't know yet, but we're not taking chances." He was already moving, making calls in rapid succession. "Vincent, Romano, get here now. Full alert." Within seconds, the house security system activated with a soft chime. Luca grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the hallway. "Get Sophia. Safe room now." I ran upstairs, my heart hammering. Sophia looked up from her homework, immediately reading the alarm on my face. "What's wrong?" "Someone's outside. We need to go to the safe room." We'd been shown the safe room on our first day but never expected to use it. Located behind a false panel in the master bedroom closet, it was a small reinforced space with its own ventilation, phone line, and emergency supplies. Sophia didn't argue, didn't ask questions. We moved fast, and I was grateful for every track practice that had taught her to respond quickly under pressure. I heard Luca's voice downstairs, calm but commanding, issuing orders I couldn't quite make out. The safe room was cramped, just large enough for 2 people to sit comfortably. A small monitor showed feeds from the exterior security cameras. I watched grainy black and white images of men moving along the perimeter fence, testing for weaknesses. "How many?" Sophia whispered. I counted. 3 that I can see. On the monitor, I watched Luca exit the house through the back door, moving with lethal purpose. Romano and Vincent appeared from different directions, converging on the intruder's position with military precision. What happened next was fast and brutal. The intruders realized they'd been made and tried to retreat, but Luca's men cut off their escape routes. I saw Luca personally take down one man, movements economical and devastating. No wasted energy, no hesitation. This was violence as a tool, wielded by someone who'd mastered it completely. Sophia pressed against my side, watching the screen with wide eyes. Is he going to kill them? I don't know, but we both saw Luca grab one man by the collar and drag him toward better light. He spoke to him, too far from cameras for audio, his posture aggressive but controlled. The man nodded frantically, clearly answering questions. After several minutes, Luca made a gesture, and Romano secured all 3 intruders with zip ties. Then Luca pulled out his phone and made a call. Within 20 minutes, 2 unmarked vans arrived. The men were loaded inside and driven away. Just like that, the threat was neutralized and removed. Luca's voice came through the intercom. "Mia, Sophia, it's clear. You can come out." We emerged from the safe room on shaky legs. Luca met us at the bottom of the stairs. He had blood on his knuckles and a rip in his shirt, but otherwise looked unaffected by what had just happened. "Are you hurt?" I asked, reaching for his hand before thinking better of it. "No. Minor." He pulled his hand back, not rejecting the gesture but keeping distance. The men were Triad scouts. They were checking properties in the area, looking for signs of occupation that matched your profile. How did they find us? They didn't specifically. They're doing systematic searches of any property connected to people they know I do business with. It was only a matter of time before they checked here. Sophia's voice was small. "So we're not safe even here. You're safe because we caught them before they confirmed anything, and now they won't be reporting back." Something dark flickered in his expression. Ever. I understood what he wasn't saying. Those men wouldn't be found alive. The thought should have horrified me. Instead, I felt only relief that the threat had been eliminated. "We can't stay here," I said. "If they found this place, others will come. You're moving. Tonight. I have another property, more secure, on my estate grounds. You'll be there until I arrange something more permanent." "Your estate? You mean the mansion where we first came?" "Yes. There's a guest house, separate from the main residence but within the secured perimeter. No one gets through that security without me knowing." It meant being closer to him, seeing him daily instead of during occasional visits. Part of me wanted that more than was probably wise. The other part recognized the danger in proximity to someone whose pull I was already struggling to resist. "Okay," I agreed. "We'll move." Luca nodded once. "Pack what you need tonight. Everything else can be collected tomorrow. I'm not leaving you here while they clean up." By they, I assumed he meant his people removing any evidence that we'd been here, eliminating the trail that had almost gotten us killed. As Sophia went upstairs to gather her things, Luca caught my arm. "I'm sorry. I thought this location was secure. You couldn't have known they'd do systematic searches." "I should have anticipated it. That's my job, anticipating threats before they materialize." His jaw was tight with what looked like self-recrimination. "This won't happen again." "Luca." I waited until he looked at me. "You saved us. Again. Whatever you were going to say before, in the kitchen, I want to hear it. When this is over, when we're settled wherever we're going, I want to know what you were going to tell me." Something shifted in his eyes, warmth breaking through the cold calculation. "When we're settled. I promise." An hour later, we drove through the night toward Luca's estate, our belongings hastily packed, our temporary home already being erased behind us. Sophia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted by fear and adrenaline crash. Luca drove in silence, his attention split between the road and periodic checks of his mirrors, making sure we weren't followed, always protecting, always vigilant. I watched the city lights give way to suburban darkness and wondered what I'd really agreed to by accepting his help. Safety, yes, but also deeper entanglement in his world, in his life, in whatever this thing was growing between us. The guest house turned out to be more than I'd expected. A small cottage tucked into manicured grounds, close enough to the main house to share security, but far enough for privacy. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, comfortable furniture that looked recently updated. "Get some sleep," Luca said as he helped carry our bags inside. "Tomorrow we'll discuss next steps." But before he could leave, I caught his hand. the same hand that had blood on it an hour ago. His knuckles were split but already cleaned, probably while I was packing. "Thank you," I said simply, "for everything." He looked at our joined hands, then at my face. Whatever he saw there made his expression soften. "You're welcome, Mia. Now lock the door behind me and try to rest." After he left, I stood at the window and watched his silhouette return to the main house. Watched the lights come on in what I assumed was his office. Watched him pace past the windows, phone to his ear, still working, still managing threats even at this late hour. Sophia appeared beside me, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Is he always like this? Taking care of everyone else? I think so. I think that's who he is under everything else. I like him, she said simply. I feel safe when he's around. Me too, I admitted. And that, more than the violence or the danger or the complete upheaval of our lives, was what scared me most. Because safety with someone like Luca Ravellini came at a price I wasn't sure I was ready to pay. 1 month into our new life on Luca's estate, I'd stopped looking over my shoulder every few minutes. The constant vigilance that had defined our first weeks was giving way to something that almost resembled normalcy. Almost. The guest cottage had become home in ways I hadn't expected. Sophia decorated her room with posters and fairy lights, creating teenage sanctuary within our protected bubble. I'd established routines that gave structure to days that might otherwise blur together. Morning coffee on the small patio, evening walks along the secured perimeter paths, dinners that we sometimes shared with Luca when his schedule allowed. The restaurant continued to thrive under my management. Revenue was up 18% from the previous month, and Antonio had started calling me his secret weapon with suppliers. I'd discovered I had a knack for this work, for seeing potential improvements and implementing them efficiently. It wasn't the career I'd imagined, but it was mine in a way nothing else had been. Sophia had thrown herself into her drawings with renewed focus. What had started as trauma processing had evolved into something more purposeful. She understood now that her sketches were evidence, potentially powerful enough to bring down dangerous men. That responsibility seemed to motivate rather than frighten her. On a Thursday afternoon, she burst into the cottage after her therapy session, eyes bright with accomplishment. "I finished them," she announced, spreading 3 detailed portraits across the kitchen table. "Dr. Hawthorne says these are as accurate as I can make them without seeing the men again, which I never want to do." I studied the drawings. They were remarkable, capturing not just features but essence. The dragon tattoo man's cold calculation, the heavy-set enforcer's brutality, the suited one's careful intelligence. Sophia had rendered them in graphite with shadows that made them feel 3-dimensional, alive in disturbing ways. "These are incredible," I told her honestly. "Have you shown Luca yet? I was hoping we could bring them to him together. Is that okay?" We walked to the main house through gardens that were starting to show autumn colors. The estate was beautiful in ways I'd barely noticed during our first desperate arrival. Old trees lined manicured paths. Stone fountains created ambient sound that was surprisingly calming. This was wealth that had accumulated over generations, not the flashy displays of new money. Teresa let us in with her usual warm greeting. We found Luca in his study, reviewing documents that he immediately turned face down when we entered. Some things weren't meant for civilian eyes. "Sophia has something to show you," I said. She handed him the completed portraits with visible pride. Luca examined each one carefully, his expression growing more intense with each detail he absorbed. "These are exceptional work," he said finally. "The level of detail is beyond what I hoped for." "Can you identify them?" Sophia asked. 2 of them, yes. This one," he indicated the dragon tattoo man, "is Wei Zhang, senior enforcer for the Triad's East Coast operations, known for efficiency and brutality. This one, the heavy-set man, is probably Han Liang, though I'll need to confirm. If it's who I think, he handles enforcement for their money laundering network. And the third?" I asked, looking at the suited figure. "I don't know him yet." But the watch detail Sophia remembered, combined with this quality of rendering, someone in my network will recognize him. Luca pulled out his phone and photographed each drawing. "May I keep these?" Sophia nodded. "They're yours. I don't want them in my room anymore." After she left to explore Teresa's garden, Luca turned to me. "These change things." With this level of identification, I can approach federal prosecutors with something valuable. The Triad's leadership has been untouchable because witnesses either disappear or refuse to testify. Sophia's drawings, combined with her eyewitness account of the murder, could crack open their entire operation. You want her to testify? It wasn't a question. I want her to have the option. Official protection through the DA's office would give you both more freedom than my private security can provide. It would also put the Triad on notice that she's under federal protection, which might make them reconsider pursuit. Might, I repeated, but you're not certain. I'm never certain about anything involving organizations this dangerous, but I know someone who can help navigate this. Thomas Reeves, a federal prosecutor who owes me a significant favor. He's one of the few in that office who isn't compromised by money or intimidation. The way he said it suggested he knew exactly who was compromised, and by what. The depth of his intelligence network was sometimes staggering. When can you meet with him? I asked. Tomorrow night, after hours at the restaurant. Somewhere public but private enough for sensitive conversation. He won't come here, and I won't go to his office. Neutral ground. I want to be there. Luca frowned. That's not necessary. This is a negotiation between federal authorities and someone with information to trade. You don't need to be involved in those details. She's my sister. My responsibility. I'm involved in every detail. I kept my voice level but firm. You've protected us, employed me, given us safety we couldn't have found anywhere else. I'm grateful for that, but I won't be sidelined when decisions are being made about Sophia's future. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition that I wasn't the frightened woman who'd knocked on his door a month ago. All right, he agreed. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Wear something professional. Reeves needs to see Sophia's guardian as competent and credible, not someone who can be dismissed or intimidated. The next evening, I dressed carefully in clothes I'd purchased with my first restaurant paycheck. A charcoal suit that fit well, burgundy blouse underneath, low heels. Professional without trying too hard. When I came downstairs, Sophia whistled appreciatively. You look like someone important, she said. I am someone important. I'm your sister. Luca was waiting by his car, and I caught the moment his eyes registered my appearance. His gaze traveled from my face down and back up, lingering just long enough to make my pulse quicken before he caught himself. You look appropriate for the meeting, he said, which was possibly the most Luca compliment I'd ever received. The drive to the restaurant was quiet. I spent it reviewing talking points in my head, anticipating questions Reeves might ask. I wanted to present Sophia's situation clearly and compellingly without seeming desperate. Desperation weakened negotiating positions. Ristorante Bella Vista was closed by the time we arrived, but lights were on in the main dining room. Luca had arranged for Antonio to prepare dinner for the meeting. Breaking bread together was its own form of diplomacy. Thomas Reeves arrived 15 minutes later. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with the careful wariness of someone who'd worked dangerous cases. His handshake was firm, his assessment of me immediate and thorough. Miss Harrington, Luca speaks highly of your management of this establishment. It's a good restaurant. I just help it run smoothly. She's being modest, Luca interjected. Revenue is up nearly 20% since she took over, and customer satisfaction ratings have increased significantly. Reeves smiled slightly. Luca doesn't often sing anyone's praises. You must actually be competent. We settled at a table Antonio had prepared with care. Wine was poured, appetizers served. The first 20 minutes were deliberately casual, feeling each other out through conversation about food and city politics. Only after main courses arrived did Reeves shift to business. So, you have a 14-year-old witness to the Marcus Webb murder, and she can identify the killers. Not just identify, Luca said. She's rendered detailed portraits based on photographic memory. We've already confirmed 2 of the 3 subjects as senior Triad enforcers. He showed Reeves the photographs of Sophia's drawings on his tablet. The prosecutor's eyebrows rose. These are remarkable. Your sister did these? She's talented, I confirmed, and traumatized, which is why we need to discuss what happens next very carefully. Reeves nodded. Let me be direct. The Webb case is high profile. The DA wants convictions. Eyewitness testimony from someone who saw the actual murder and can identify specific individuals would be invaluable. But putting a 14-year-old on the stand against the Triad comes with serious risks. That's why we're here, Luca said, to discuss protection parameters that would make testimony viable. Standard witness protection would involve relocation, new identities, federal marshals. Not acceptable, I said immediately. Both men looked at me. Ripping Sophia away from everything she knows, creating a false identity, moving to some random city where she has no support system. She's already traumatized. That would destroy her. Miss Harrington, I understand your concern, but the Triad has long reach and deep resources, which is why she needs protection that doesn't require her to disappear completely. I leaned forward. What if the testimony was given under conditions that maintained her anonymity? Video deposition, face obscured, voice altered if necessary. The drawings provide identification. Her verbal account provides timeline and details. The jury doesn't need to see her face to hear her story. Reeves considered this. That's an interesting approach. It would require judicial approval, but for a minor witness in a case this significant, a judge might grant it. And the protection? I pressed. What happens between now and trial? During trial preparation? After the verdict? That depends on threat assessment. If the Triad discovers her identity before trial, standard relocation becomes necessary regardless of testimony conditions. So the key is maintaining her anonymity throughout, Luca said, which means limiting who knows her identity within your office. No leaks, no casual mentions, no administrative assistants with access to witness files who might be compromised. Reeves's expression hardened slightly. You're suggesting my office has security issues. I'm stating facts. The Triad has purchased influence throughout city government. Assuming your office is immune would be naive. Tension crackled between them until I interrupted. What if we establish clear protocols? Sophia's identity is known only to you and one other senior prosecutor you trust completely. All documentation refers to her as Witness J or similar designation. Interview preparation happens off-site at secure locations. And if there's any indication of leak or compromise, we pull her from the process immediately. You'd walk away from federal protection? Reeves asked. If it meant keeping my sister safe? Absolutely. Something in my tone made him reassess. You're not the typical terrified witness seeking help. You're negotiating terms. Because I understand that you need Sophia's testimony as much as we need your protection. That makes this a negotiation, not a favor. Luca's hand found mine under the table, squeezing briefly. Approval, support, something that sent warmth through me despite the tension of the moment. Reeves sat back, considering. All right, here's what I can offer. Anonymity protocols as you suggested, with witness identity restricted to myself and the lead prosecutor. Video deposition with identity protection approved by the judge. Federal protection during preparation and trial period, but private security supplementing our measures if you prefer. After conviction, we reassess based on threat level. And if threat level remains high indefinitely? I asked. Then we discuss long-term options. But Miss Harrington, I'll be honest. The Triad's leadership is aging out. Younger generation wants legitimacy, distance from street violence. Successful prosecution of Webb's murder could fracture their organization, reduce their operational capacity significantly. Your sister's testimony might actually end the threat, rather than extend it. It was the most hopeful thing I'd heard since this nightmare began. I looked at Luca, reading agreement in his subtle nod. Okay, I said. We'll cooperate, with the conditions we discussed. I'll need to speak with Sophia directly at some point. Assess her as a witness. Prepare her for what testimony involves. That can be arranged, Luca said. Through my people, at secure locations. No documentation of meetings goes through official channels until absolutely necessary. They shook hands on it, sealing agreements that would shape the next months of our lives. After Reeves left, Luca and I remained at the table. Antonio had discreetly disappeared into the kitchen, giving us privacy. You were impressive tonight, Luca said. Reeves is notoriously difficult to negotiate with. You held your own. I had motivation. Sophia's safety isn't negotiable. Still, most people fold under pressure from federal prosecutors. You pushed back intelligently, proposed solutions instead of just resisting his terms. That takes confidence and strategic thinking. The praise warmed me more than it should have. I've been watching you work, learning how you navigate complicated situations. Is that what you've been doing? Watching me? There was something in his tone, an edge of awareness that made my breath catch. We were alone in the restaurant. Dim lighting creating intimacy the space didn't usually possess. The air between us felt charged suddenly, heavy with things unspoken. I noticed things, I admitted. How you handle people, how you assess situations, how you make decisions that balance immediate needs against long-term consequences. And what else do you notice, Mia? He'd moved closer without me realizing, or maybe I'd leaned in. The table between us felt like insufficient barrier against whatever was building in the space we occupied. I noticed that you care, I said quietly. Despite the reputation, despite the violence, despite everything people fear about you, you care about protecting people who matter to you. You care about doing things right, even when right is complicated. You matter to me. The statement was direct, unguarded. Both of you. I stopped pretending otherwise weeks ago. My heart hammered. Luca, I know. Bad timing, power dynamics, all the reasons this is complicated. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. But I need you to know that how I see you has changed. You're not someone I'm helping anymore. You're someone I want in my life. The confession hung between us, weighted with possibility and danger. I should have pulled back, maintained the professional distance that kept things uncomplicated. Instead, I turned my hand over, letting our fingers interlace. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. You're my employer, Sophia's protector, the person we depend on for safety. How do I separate genuine feeling from gratitude or dependence? You don't, not completely. But Mia, I've been where you are. I know what it's like to question whether emotion is real or circumstantial. After my wife died, I thought I'd never feel anything genuine again. The revelation stopped me cold. You were married? For 6 years. She died 8 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. His voice was matter of fact, but pain edged every word. I loved her completely. When she died, I locked that part of myself away. Safer not to feel, not to risk that kind of loss again. Until now? The question was barely a whisper. Until you knocked on my door at midnight with your terrified sister and your desperate courage. Until you proved yourself capable and intelligent and unwilling to be diminished by circumstance. Until I started finding excuses to visit, just to see you. We were standing now, though I didn't remember moving. The table no longer separated us. Luca's hand came up to brush hair from my face, his touch gentle despite the violence I knew those hands capable of. This is a bad idea, I said, even as I leaned into his touch. Probably. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Tell me to stop. I should have. Every rational thought screamed that this complicated everything, put emotion into a situation that needed clarity. But rationality had nothing to do with the pull I felt toward him, the way my body responded to his proximity. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. His breath warm against my lips. Another second, and the space between us would disappear completely. I stepped back. The loss of contact was physically painful, but necessary. Luca's hand dropped immediately, respect overriding desire. I can't, I said, voice shaking. Not like this. Not when there's so much power imbalance between us. Not when I don't know if what I feel is real, or just reaction to everything you've done for us. I understand. His voice was rough but accepting. I shouldn't have pushed. You didn't push. I wanted it too. That's the problem. I wrapped my arms around myself. Luca, you employ me. You protect Sophia. We live in your house, eat food you provide, exist in safety you maintain. How do I know I'm making choices freely when you control so much of my life? The stark honesty of it settled between us. He nodded slowly. You're right. I didn't see it that way, but you're right. He stepped back further, creating physical distance. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. No, it wasn't inappropriate. It was honest. But the timing is wrong. Maybe after this situation resolves, After Sophia testifies and we're not living in crisis mode. After I've established real independence beyond what you've given me. Maybe then we could see if this is real. And if it is, then we'll deal with it. Together. As equals. Something in his expression softened. Equals. I like that idea. We stood there for a long moment, the almost kiss hanging between us like a promise or a regret. Finally, Luca cleared his throat. We should go. Sophia will wonder where we are. The drive back to the estate was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Something had been acknowledged, even if not acted upon. The air felt clearer somehow, honest in ways it hadn't been before. At the cottage door, Luca paused. For what it's worth, Mia. Everything I said tonight was true. Not circumstantial. Not complicated by obligation or power. Just true. I believe you. Which is why I need to wait until I can say the same without doubt. He nodded once and left. I watched him walk back to the main house, shoulders straight, despite what had to be disappointment or frustration. Inside, Sophia was already asleep. I stood at her doorway watching her peaceful breathing, thinking about the meeting with Reeves, and the almost kiss with Luca, and the complicated tangle our lives had become. We had a path forward now. Federal cooperation, protection protocols, hope for resolution. But we also had this new thing between Luca and me. Undefined, but undeniable. Tomorrow I'd worry about implications. Tonight I'd just let myself feel the possibility. 6 weeks after the meeting with Reeves, everything changed in the span of a single morning phone call. I was at the restaurant reviewing inventory when Luca called. His voice was controlled but urgent in the way I'd learned meant serious trouble. The police used Sophia's drawings. They made 2 arrests early this morning. Wei Zhang and Han Liang. Both are in custody. He didn't mean they'd paraded a teenager's sketches through a precinct. Reeves had his people extract only the identifiers, the tattoos, the scars, the expensive watch, then built the warrants on surveillance and sources already in motion. Sophia's name never touched a report. The drawings stayed locked away, useful only as a map in the right hands. I gripped the phone tighter. That's good news, right? Yes and no. The third man escaped, and now the Triad knows someone provided detailed identification that led to the arrests. They'll be looking for retaliation. My stomach dropped. Against Sophia? Against me. You and Sophia are under my protection, which makes me the target. They'll try to hit my operations, my people, anything that weakens my position. I'm moving you both tonight. Not the cottage. Somewhere more secure. Where? There's a reinforced space within the main house. It was built as a panic room originally, but I had it expanded years ago. Separate living quarters, self-contained systems. You'll be safer there than anywhere else while this plays out. The idea of moving into Luca's house, living in even closer proximity, sent conflicting emotions through me. We'd maintained careful distance since the almost kiss at the restaurant. Professional interactions, polite conversations when he visited Sophia, nothing that acknowledged the tension that still hummed between us whenever we occupied the same space. How long? I asked. Until the Triad makes their move and I respond. Could be days, could be weeks. That evening, Romano and Vincent escorted us to the main house with our essential belongings. The bunker entrance was concealed behind a bookshelf in Luca's private study. The space beyond was far more comfortable than I'd anticipated. 2 bedrooms, a full bathroom, small kitchen area, and a living room with comfortable furniture. Monitors showed security feeds from around the estate. Emergency supplies lined one wall. It's like a fancy underground apartment, Sophia observed, exploring with cautious interest. It's a fortress, Luca corrected, entering behind us. Nothing gets through the estate security, and even if it did, this space is designed to withstand assault for extended periods. The casual way he discussed assault made the danger feel more real. This wasn't hypothetical anymore. The Triad was actively hunting for ways to hurt him because he'd protected us. That night, the first sign of retaliation came. Explosions rocked 2 of Luca's shipping warehouses on opposite sides of the city. No one was killed, but the message was clear. The Triad was declaring war. Luca didn't come downstairs that night. Through the security monitors, I watched lights burning in his office until dawn as he coordinated responses, called in favors, repositioned his people for whatever came next. By the second day, reports came in of skirmishes between Luca's men and Triad enforcers. Nothing that made the news, but enough that the criminal underworld was buzzing with speculation about full territorial war. Is he going to be okay? Sophia asked that evening as we watched Luca pace his office through the monitor feed. I don't know, I admitted, but I know he's good at this, surviving, protecting what's his. We're what's his now, aren't we? The simple observation carried weight I couldn't fully process. I think so. In his mind, at least. And in yours? I looked at my sister. She'd grown up so much in the past weeks. Trauma had stripped away some of her innocence, but it had also sharpened her perception. She saw things clearly now. Yeah, I said quietly. In mine too. By day 4, we'd fallen into strange routines. I worked remotely, managing the restaurant through phone calls and video conferences with Antonio. Sophia continued her online classes and therapy sessions with Dr. Hawthorne via secure video. And Luca joined us for meals when he could, though his attention was always partially elsewhere, monitoring threats and calculating responses. One evening, he came down carrying a wooden box that he set on the coffee table. I thought Sophia might be getting bored, he said. Do you play chess? Sophia shook her head. I know the basic pieces, but that's it. Then I'll teach you. He began setting up the board with careful precision. It's a good game for understanding strategy, how small moves connect to larger patterns, how patience wins over aggression. I watched them play that first game, Luca explaining each piece's movement and purpose. Sophia absorbed the information quickly, her natural intelligence evident in how fast she grasped basic strategies. Why is the queen so powerful? She asked, studying the board. Because she can move in any direction without limitation. The king is important, but the queen does the real work protecting him. That seems backwards. Shouldn't the king be strongest? Power and importance aren't the same thing. The king represents what you're protecting. The queen represents what does the protecting. In my world, that's often how it works. The thing that matters most is rarely the thing that fights. Sophia looked at me when he said it, and I felt the weight of the metaphor. We were what mattered. He was what fought. They played several games over the following days, and I watched Sophia's confidence grow with each one. She started winning occasionally, which seemed to please Luca more than his own victories. He was patient with her in ways I wouldn't have expected from someone whose life was built on decisive action. On the 6th night of our bunker isolation, Sophia asked the question that had been hanging between all of us. Are you two dating? The bluntness of it caught both Luca and me off guard. We'd been sitting in the living area after dinner, Sophia working on homework, while Luca reviewed security reports, and I read. The question dropped into comfortable silence like a stone into still water. Sophia, I started, unsure how to answer. It's a simple question, she continued, looking between us. You look at each other differently than before. He comes down here more than necessary for security checks. You smile when you hear his footsteps on the stairs. So are you dating or just thinking about it? Luca set aside his tablet. Would it bother you if we were? I don't know. Maybe. You're kind of her boss, and you're protecting us, which feels weird to mix with romance. But also you make her happy, and she makes you less scary, so maybe it wouldn't bother me if you figured it out. The teenage wisdom of it made me want to laugh and cry simultaneously. We're not dating, I said carefully, because the situation is complicated. Power dynamics, as you mentioned. Gratitude mixed with other feelings. Timing that makes everything harder to parse. So you want to be dating, but you're overthinking it? Sophia translated. That's an oversimplification. Is it, though? She looked at Luca. Do you have feelings for my sister? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Romantic feelings? Like you want to be with her beyond just protection and employment? Yes. And Mia, do you have feelings for him? I met Luca's gaze across the room. His dark eyes held mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. We'd avoided this conversation for weeks, circling around it through careful distance and unspoken acknowledgement. But Sophia's direct question stripped away all the careful deflection. Yes, I admitted. I do. Then what's the actual problem? Sophia asked. You both have feelings. You're both adults. The power thing is real, but it seems like you're aware of it, which means you can work around it. So what's really stopping you? I wanted Mia to choose freely, Luca said, his voice low, without feeling obligated by everything I've provided, without gratitude confusing her judgment about what she actually wants. And I wanted to be sure what I felt was real, I added. Not just response to circumstances. Not dependence masquerading as attraction. Sophia closed her homework. Okay, here's what I think. And I'm just a 14-year-old, so feel free to ignore me. But I've watched you both for weeks now. The way you care about each other isn't about circumstances or obligation. It's about who you are as people. Luca, you don't protect us because you have to. You do it because you genuinely care about our well-being. And Mia, you don't stay because you're trapped. You stay because you feel safe with him in ways that have nothing to do with his security measures. The observation was so accurate it hurt. When did you get so perceptive? Trauma makes you notice things you'd normally miss. Also, Dr. Hawthorne talks about authentic emotion versus reactive emotion. I've been thinking about it a lot in therapy. She stood and gathered her books. I'm going to bed. You two should talk without me here. And for what it's worth, I'd be okay with you being together. He makes you happy in ways I haven't seen since before Mom died. After she disappeared into her bedroom, Luca and I sat in loaded silence. The security monitors hummed softly. Somewhere above us, the estate settled into night routines. She's not wrong, Luca said finally. About any of it. I moved from my chair to sit beside him on the couch, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. No, she's not. But that doesn't make it less complicated. What if we stop trying to make it uncomplicated? What if we just acknowledge that this situation is messy and imperfect and probably inadvisable, but that what we feel is real anyway? Is that what you want? To be with me despite all the reasons it's difficult? He turned to face me fully, his hand coming up to cup my cheek with surprising gentleness. Mia, I've spent weeks trying to maintain distance because I thought it was the right thing to do. Trying to let you choose without pressure. But watching you every day, talking to you, seeing who you are when you're not performing for safety or survival. I don't want distance anymore. I want you, however that looks, whatever complications come with it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm scared. Of me? Of this. Of feeling something this strong for someone whose life involves violence and danger. Of bringing Sophia into a world where explosions and retaliation are normal. Of not being able to separate gratitude from genuine emotion, even though I'm trying. Those are all legitimate fears. I can't promise you safety beyond what I'm already providing. I can't promise my world will get less dangerous. But I can promise that what I feel for you isn't about gratitude or circumstance. It's about who you are, the woman who knocked on my door at midnight with desperate courage, who rebuilt her life while protecting her sister, who negotiated with a federal prosecutor like an equal, who runs my restaurant better than anyone before her. That woman. That's who I want. Tears pricked at my eyes. You see me as more than I see myself sometimes. Then let me keep showing you what I see until you believe it. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away like I had at the restaurant. But this time I didn't want distance. This time I met him halfway. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if we were both afraid of shattering the moment. His lips were warm and gentle, his hand cradling my face with care that contradicted everything I knew about his capacity for violence. I responded instinctively, my hands finding their way to his shoulders, feeling solid muscle beneath expensive fabric. The kiss deepened, months of restrained attraction finally given permission to exist. His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer, and I went willingly, needing the contact, the confirmation that this was real and mutual and as powerful as it felt. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Luca rested his forehead against mine. Tell me you felt that, he whispered. I felt it. God, I felt it. No doubt? No confusion about whether it's real? I pulled back enough to look at his face. His eyes were dark with emotion, vulnerable in ways I'd never seen. This powerful, dangerous man was letting me see beneath all his careful control. No doubt, I said firmly. This is real, Luca. Maybe it's crazy and complicated and risky, but it's real. He smiled, genuine and unguarded. Then that's all I need. We kissed again, slower this time, savoring the permission we'd finally given ourselves. His hands were respectful but possessive, mapping the curve of my spine, the line of my waist. I felt simultaneously safe and electrified, protected and desired. Eventually, we separated enough to breathe, though we stayed close, my head resting against his shoulder, his arm around me. Sophia's going to ask questions in the morning, I said. Let her. I'm not hiding this. Your people will notice too. Romano, Vincent, Teresa. They'll know something changed. Good. I want them to know you're important to me. Not just under my protection, but part of my life. Is that okay? I thought about it. About what it meant to be publicly acknowledged as connected to Luca Ravellini. The scrutiny, the judgment, the danger that came with proximity to power. Yeah, I decided. It's okay. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, the security monitors casting soft light around us. Somewhere above, the war with the Triad continued. Threats lurked in shadows. Our lives remained precarious and complicated. But in that moment, in that underground sanctuary, we'd found something worth protecting beyond just survival. We'd found each other. And despite everything, that felt like the safest thing of all. From her bedroom doorway, Sophia watched us with a small, satisfied smile. I caught a glimpse of her retreating back, saw her genuine happiness at seeing us together. For the first time since witnessing that murder, she looked at ease, like the broken pieces of our lives were finally arranging themselves into something that made sense. She's watching, I murmured against Luca's shoulder. I know. She's been checking on us periodically through the crack in her door for the last 15 minutes. Why didn't you say something? Because she needed to see this. To know that the adults in her life can find happiness, even in difficult circumstances. To understand that what we're building includes her and considers her. His awareness of Sophia's emotional needs struck me deeply. He wasn't just protecting her body. He was protecting her ability to trust and hope and believe in good things. I love you, I said, the words surprising me even as they emerged. Luca pulled back to look at me, his expression arrested. Say that again. I love you. I probably have for weeks, but I was too scared to name it. But I love you, Luca. Completely. Every complication included. He kissed me again, this time with an intensity that stole my breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I love you too, Mia. More than I thought I could love anyone again. You and Sophia, you've become everything I didn't know I was missing. We held each other in the artificial light of the bunker, building something real in the midst of chaos. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. The Triad war would continue. Threats would evolve, but we'd face them together now, not as protector and protected, but as partners, and that made all the difference. 6 weeks after that first kiss in the bunker, I woke to the sound of Luca's phone ringing at 5 a.m. We'd been sharing his bedroom for the past 3 weeks, though Sophia still occupied the guest room down the hall. The normality of it, waking up beside him, feeling the warmth of his body next to mine, still surprised me sometimes. He answered in Italian, his voice immediately alert despite the early hour. I watched his expression shift from sleep to sharp focus as he listened. When he ended the call, he was already moving, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. What happened? I asked, sitting up. They caught him. The third man. Mexican authorities found him trying to cross the border with forged documents. He's being extradited within 48 hours. The relief that flooded through me was almost painful. All 3 of them. Sophia can identify all 3, and now they're all in custody, which means Reeves can move forward with prosecution. This changes everything. He sat on the edge of the bed, pulling on shoes. It also means the Triad's leadership will be making decisions about how to respond. They're losing a significant operation here, and they'll want to minimize damage. Is that good or bad for us? Depends on what they decide. Could go either way. He leaned over and kissed me. Quick, but genuine. Stay in the house today. I need to make some calls and meet with people. This situation is about to resolve one way or another. After he left, I checked on Sophia. She was still asleep, peaceful in a way she hadn't been 6 weeks ago. The therapy was working. The safety was working. Having structure and love and protection was slowly healing what trauma had broken. I spent the morning at the estate, working remotely while monitoring news channels for any mention of the arrest. Nothing public yet, but Luca had sent me a text confirming the extradition was proceeding smoothly. By afternoon, Reeves called with updates about trial preparation and timeline. With all 3 suspects in custody and Sophia's testimony secured, we're looking at trial within 8 weeks, he said. The defense will push for delays, but the judge is motivated to move this quickly given the high-profile nature of Webb's murder. And Sophia's safety during that time? Federal marshals will supplement private security. We'll coordinate with Luca's people to ensure comprehensive coverage. But Miss Harrington, I want you to understand something. Once this goes to trial, once Sophia testifies, there's no taking it back. Her identity as a witness will be part of the record, even with anonymity protections. People with resources can usually find what they're looking for. Are you saying she'll never be truly safe? I'm saying her safety will depend on the Triad's organizational capacity after their leadership faces federal prosecution. If we dismantle them effectively, the threat diminishes significantly. If we only wound them, it could get worse before it gets better. The honesty was appreciated even if the reality was frightening. After the call ended, I found Sophia in the library, working on calculus homework, while Teresa brought her lunch. The 3rd man was caught, I told her. They have all 3 now. She set down her pencil slowly. So it's really going to happen. The trial. My testimony. Yes. Are you ready for that? I don't know if anyone's ever ready to testify against people who kill prosecutors. But Dr. Hawthorne says I'm psychologically prepared, and I want them punished for what they did. Not just to Mr. Webb, but for chasing us, for turning our lives upside down, for making me too scared to sleep for weeks. The anger in her voice was healthy, according to Dr. Hawthorne. Better than fear or helplessness. It meant she was reclaiming agency over her own story. We'll get through it, I promised. Together. That evening, Luca returned looking worn in ways that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. He pulled me aside before dinner, his expression serious. I received a message from the Triad's remaining leadership. They want to meet, discuss terms for de-escalation. That sounds positive. Maybe. Or it's a setup for retaliation. Either way, I have to go. This is how these things get resolved. Through direct conversation between leadership. Fear spiked through me. When? Tomorrow night. Neutral location, public enough for safety but private enough for sensitive discussion. I'm bringing Romano and Vincent. They're bringing their own security. There are rules for these meetings, protocols both sides honor. What if they don't honor the protocols? His jaw tightened. Then it becomes a different kind of meeting. But that's unlikely. They're weakened right now. They need peace more than I do. The question is, what they're willing to offer to get it. The next evening felt endless. Sophia and I had dinner without Luca, both of us too anxious to eat properly. Teresa tried to distract us with stories about her grandchildren, but nothing could fully alleviate the tension of knowing Luca was meeting with people who'd tried to kill us. At 9:30, headlights swept across the front windows. I heard car doors, voices, footsteps. Then Luca entered the house with Romano and Vincent flanking him. His expression was cold in ways I'd never seen before. Not angry exactly, but something harder and more dangerous. Is Sophia asleep? He asked without preamble. In her room. What happened? Conference room. Now. I need you to hear this while I still have clarity. The conference room was off his main office, a space used for business meetings I was rarely part of. Romano and Vincent were already there when we entered. Luca closed the door and stood at the head of the table, hands braced against the surface. The meeting went as expected initially, he began. They proposed cessation of hostilities in exchange for reduced testimony from Sophia. They wanted her to identify only the triggerman, not the other 2. Said it would be in everyone's best interest to limit the scope of prosecutions. You said no, I guessed. I said Sophia's testimony wasn't negotiable. That she'd testify to everything she witnessed, identify everyone involved, and cooperate fully with federal prosecution. They didn't like that answer. What did they do? His eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made my breath catch. The leader, a man named Jianshu, suggested that if Sophia's testimony couldn't be limited, perhaps Sophia herself could be. He called her a loose end that needed resolution. The room went silent. The casual way Luca relayed it didn't hide the threat underneath. "What did you say?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. I made it clear that any action against Sophia, any threat to her existence or well-being, would result in total war. Not skirmishes or targeted hits. Complete dismantling of every Triad operation in this region. I listed their businesses, their properties, their key personnel. Made it clear that I have the resources and intelligence to destroy them utterly if they pursue this path. Romano spoke up. Boss was very convincing. Left no room for misunderstanding. "How convincing?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Luca straightened. Jianshu pushed back. Said I was protecting one witness at the expense of peace. I explained that Sophia isn't just a witness. She's family under my protection. That attacking her would be attacking me directly, which has consequences he couldn't afford. And then he made a mistake. He laughed and said family was just a word. That I'd give her up eventually when the cost got too high. So I showed him what the word actually means to me. The way he said it made my skin prickle. "Luca, what did you do?" I broke his hand. Not all the bones, just enough to make the point clear. His security moved, my security moved. It could have escalated into real violence, but Jianshu called them off. He understood finally that this wasn't negotiation with flexibility. This was me drawing a permanent line. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. The man I loved had just casually described breaking someone's hand to prove a point about protecting my sister. The meeting ended there, Romano added. But the message was delivered. The Triad knows that Sophia is untouchable, that any move against her brings down their entire operation. Will they honor that? I asked. They'll have to, Luca said, because I also made calls after the meeting. I have allies in the Russian organization, connections with the Albanians, even some understanding with Cosa Nostra. I made it known that Mia Harrington is under collective protection, that anyone who harms her makes enemies of multiple organizations simultaneously. The Triad can't afford that kind of unified opposition. The scope of what he'd done, the power he'd leveraged, the violence he'd committed, it all crashed over me at once. This was the reality of his world, not the careful control he showed at home or the patience he demonstrated with Sophia. This was the brutality that kept him powerful and feared. I need air, I said, standing abruptly. Mia, just give me a minute. I left the conference room and went to the back terrace, breathing in cold night air that did nothing to settle the chaos in my chest. I heard the door open behind me but didn't turn around. I know what you're thinking, Luca said quietly. Do you? Because I'm not sure I know what I'm thinking. You're thinking that you just saw who I really am. That the violence you knew about abstractly is now concrete and disturbing. That you're questioning whether you can actually live with someone capable of breaking bones to make a point. The accuracy hurt. Am I wrong to think those things? No. You'd be foolish not to. He moved to stand beside me, both of us looking out at the dark grounds. I won't apologize for what I did. Jianshu threatened your sister. He laughed about it. He needed to understand that some threats have immediate consequences. You could have just walked away, ended the meeting, and let him think the threat was viable, that he could keep testing boundaries until he found an opening. No. The only language that works in my world is decisive action. Hesitation gets people killed. I turned to face him. I don't want Sophia growing up thinking violence is the answer to everything. Neither do I. Which is why I don't expose her to this side of things. Why I'm careful about what she sees and hears. But Mia, she's already been exposed to violence. She watched a man die. She's been hunted by killers. Pretending my world is gentle won't protect her from realities she already understands. There has to be limits, though. Lines you don't cross. There are. I don't harm innocents. I don't use violence for pleasure or ego. I don't target families or children. But people who threaten what I protect? People who laugh about hurting a 14-year-old girl? For them, I have no mercy. The conviction in his voice was absolute. This wasn't a man struggling with moral ambiguity. This was someone who'd made peace with his choices and their consequences. "Tell me about your code," I said. "The rules you actually follow." He was quiet for a moment, considering. "I protect those under my care absolutely. I honor agreements made in good faith. I don't lie to people I respect. I use violence only when necessary. But when necessary, I use it completely. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. And the things you've done that keep you up at night, there are some. Decisions I'd make differently with hindsight. People I've hurt who didn't deserve it. But regret doesn't change the past, and my world doesn't allow for excessive introspection. You move forward, or you die." I leaned against the railing. "I knew who you were when I knocked on your door. I knew what kind of man I was asking for help. But knowing abstractly and seeing concretely are different." "Yes, they are. So what now? Are you leaving?" The question hung between us. He wasn't trying to convince me to stay, wasn't making promises about changing or being different. He was simply asking if I could accept the totality of who he was. I thought about the past several weeks, the way he'd protected Sophia with unwavering commitment, how he'd given me meaningful work and treated me as an equal, the patience he showed teaching chess, the gentleness of his touch despite hands capable of terrible violence, the way he'd built a life for us within his dangerous world. "No," I said finally, "I'm not leaving. Even knowing what you know now, especially knowing what I know now, because I understand that the violence isn't who you are. It's what you do to protect what matters. And I'd rather be with someone who acts decisively to keep us safe than with someone who hesitates and lets threats grow." Relief flickered across his expression. "You're sure? Because once you fully commit to this life, Mia, there's no pretending you didn't know what it involved." "I'm sure, but I need you to promise me something." "What?" "That you'll never ask me to be okay with the violence. That you'll let me struggle with it when I need to. That you won't expect me to celebrate or participate in that part of your world. I promise. Your conscience stays your own. I'd never ask you to compromise it." I moved into his arms and he held me tightly. "I love you," I said against his chest. "All of you. Even the parts that scare me. I love you too. More than I knew I could love anything." His voice was rough. "Thank you for staying." We stood like that for a long time, the cold air wrapping around us while we held each other. The next day would bring its own complications. The trial would proceed. Life would continue in all its complicated reality. But we'd face it together, with clear eyes about who we were and what we'd accepted. When we finally went back inside, Sophia was waiting in the hallway. She'd heard enough through the door to understand what had happened. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Luca knelt to her level. "Everything is okay. You're safe. The Triad won't bother you again. You have my word." "Because you hurt someone?" He didn't lie to her. "Yes, because I made it clear that hurting you has consequences they can't afford." She processed this with the seriousness it deserved. "Thank you for protecting me, even when it means doing hard things. Always, Sophia. That's what family does." She hugged him then. This 14-year-old who'd seen too much and understood too clearly. And I watched the most dangerous man I'd ever known hold my sister with infinite gentleness, and knew I'd made the right choice. This was our life now. Complicated and imperfect, and built on foundations most people would never understand. But it was ours, and it was real, and it was worth everything it took to protect it. 8 weeks after the confrontation with the Triad leadership, I stood outside the federal courthouse watching Sophia walk up the steps beside Luca. She wore a navy suit we'd picked out together, her blonde hair pulled back in a professional bun that made her look older than 15. The video deposition had been scheduled for today, her testimony captured in a secure room with only essential personnel present. Reeves met us at the entrance, his expression conveying both confidence and concern. "She ready?" "As ready as she'll ever be," I said, though my stomach was in knots. The deposition room was smaller than I'd expected, with cameras positioned to capture Sophia's testimony, while keeping her face obscured from any recording that might be shown in court. A technician explained the voice modulation system that would protect her identity even further. Throughout it all, Sophia remained remarkably composed, her hand occasionally reaching for the stress ball Dr. Hawthorne had given her. Luca and I sat in an observation room where we could watch through one-way glass, but not interfere. I gripped his hand tightly as the prosecutor began asking Sophia to describe the events of that October night. She spoke clearly and without hesitation. Yes, she'd witnessed the murder of Marcus Webb. Yes, she could identify the 3 men responsible. The portraits she'd drawn were displayed, and she confirmed each one with specific details about distinguishing features. The dragon tattoo on Wei Zhang's neck, the gold chain Han Liang wore, the expensive watch on the 3rd man, later identified as Lin Zhao. When the defense attorney asked if she was certain about her identifications, Sophia's voice never wavered. I see their faces every time I close my eyes. I'm absolutely certain. The deposition lasted 3 hours. By the end, Sophia looked exhausted but satisfied. She'd done what needed to be done, and she'd done it with courage that made me impossibly proud. The trial itself proceeded quickly by legal standards. With Sophia's testimony, the physical evidence, and testimony from forensic experts, the prosecution built an overwhelming case. The defense tried to challenge the video deposition format, arguing it violated their client's confrontation rights, but the judge ruled that the anonymity protections were justified given the defendant's documented history of witness intimidation. Luca attended every day of the trial, a silent presence in the gallery that sent a clear message about whose interests were at stake. I joined him when restaurant duties allowed, watching justice slowly grind through its processes. The verdict came on a Wednesday afternoon. Guilty on all counts for all 3 defendants. First-degree murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. When the judge sentenced each man to life in federal prison without possibility of parole, I felt tension I'd been carrying for months finally release. Outside the courthouse, Reeves found us. It's done. The Triad's operational capacity in this region is effectively destroyed. Between these convictions and the intelligence Sophia's case generated, we've dismantled their entire network. So she's safe now? I needed to hear him say it explicitly. As safe as anyone can be. There's always risk, but without organizational structure, the Triad can't mount coordinated retaliation. Individual members might harbor grudges, but Luca's reputation should discourage anyone from acting on them. After months of constant vigilance, the idea of actual safety felt foreign. But as we drove back to the estate that evening, I allowed myself to believe it was real. The changes came gradually, but steadily. Sophia enrolled in a private school 15 minutes from the estate, a place with excellent security and a strong academic program. She joined the track team and quickly became one of their fastest runners. The nightmares decreased from nightly to occasional. Her therapy sessions reduced to once a week, then every other week, focused now on maintaining progress rather than active trauma recovery. She made friends, real friends who came over for study groups and movie nights. The first time I heard her laughing with classmates in the living room, something in my chest loosened. This was the teenage experience she deserved, the normalcy we'd fought so hard to reclaim, and the people she'd left behind weren't forgotten. Reeves crafted a clean transfer story for her old school, family relocation, nothing that invited questions, and her coach received a brief note from a guardian explaining she'd be off the roster for the season. Sophia wrote to the 2 friends she trusted most, vague on details, but honest about needing distance. Their replies were simple and fierce, and that closure let her step forward without feeling like she'd abandoned her life. Her relationship with Luca evolved into something beautifully uncomplicated. She called him by his first name, but treated him with affection that was unmistakably familial. He helped with her math homework, attended her track meets, and had opinions about which colleges she should consider even though she was only 15. The dynamic was natural, organic, built on genuine care rather than obligation. One evening at dinner, she casually mentioned that her friends thought Luca was her dad, and she hadn't corrected them because it was easier than explaining the complicated truth. "Does that bother you?" Luca asked carefully. "No, it's kind of nice actually. Having someone who acts like a dad, even if that's not technically what you are." She pushed food around her plate. "My real dad left when I was 3. I barely remember him. You've been more of a father in 5 months than he was in 3 years. I watched Luca process this, saw the emotion he tried to hide. I'm honored you think of me that way, Sophia. Good, because I'm going to need someone to teach me to drive in a few months. And Mia is terrible at parallel parking. The easy deflection into humor was so perfectly teenage that we all laughed. My relationship with Luca became public knowledge gradually. First among his immediate staff, who noticed us arriving together, leaving together, the casual intimacy of long-established couples. Then among his business associates, who saw us at restaurants and social functions as a clear unit. Finally among the broader organization, where the news that Luca Ravellini had a serious relationship spread through networks I'd never fully understand. The reactions were mixed but largely accepting. Some of his older associates were skeptical about me, this outsider with no family connections or criminal pedigree. But my success with Bella Vista earned grudging respect. Numbers spoke louder than bloodlines in business circles. The restaurant had become the most profitable property in Luca's legitimate portfolio. Revenue had increased 43% under my management, and we'd earned a coveted review in a major food magazine praising both Antonio's cuisine and the impeccable service standards I'd implemented. Luca took obvious pride in showing the article to people, as if my success reflected his good judgment in trusting me. 6 weeks after the trial, he asked me to meet him at the restaurant after closing. I found him in the office reviewing papers spread across the desk. "Come look at this," he said, gesturing me over. The documents were legal contracts, dense with terminology I didn't fully understand. But I caught the essential points: partnership agreement, equal ownership, profit-sharing arrangements. My name beside his on official business registration forms. "What is this?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "A business partnership. Real partnership, legally binding, with equal decision-making authority and equal financial stake. Bella Vista would be ours jointly, not mine with you as employee." I stared at the papers. "This isn't a small gesture, Luca. This is significant financial commitment." "Yes, because you've earned it. You've transformed this restaurant from underperforming to exceptional. You've built relationships with suppliers, trained staff, created systems that work. This isn't charity or romance. This is recognizing your actual contribution and compensating it appropriately. But equal partnership? That's more than just compensation. It's also insurance. If something happens to me, if my world catches up in ways I can't control, you need independent financial security. This restaurant, legally half yours, provides that. You could run it without me. Sell your share if needed. You'd have real options beyond dependence on my protection. The practicality of it moved me deeply. This wasn't a romantic gesture. This was him genuinely ensuring I had autonomy and security regardless of our relationship. "I accept," I said, "as your partner, in business and everything else." His smile was worth everything. We signed the papers that night, witnessed by Romano and Teresa, making it official. I was no longer just the woman Luca Ravellini protected. I was his business partner, his equal in this venture, someone with agency and power in my own right. Our relationship settled into patterns that felt sustainable. We lived together openly at the estate. We made decisions jointly about everything from Sophia's education to restaurant expansion plans to how to handle various business challenges. The dynamic was genuinely partnership, built on respect and trust, and the foundation we'd established through crisis. The sex was incredible, passionate, and tender by turns. But what surprised me more was how comfortable the mundane parts were. Grocery shopping together, arguing about what to watch on television, the boring intimacy of shared life that meant more than grand gestures. When Sophia's 15th birthday approached, we planned a dinner at the main house. Not the cottage where we'd hidden, not the bunker where we'd sheltered. The actual mansion, in the formal dining room, claiming space that had once felt forbidden. Teresa outdid herself with the meal, multiple courses that showcased Antonio's skills and her planning abilities. The guest list was small but significant. Romano and Vincent, who'd protected us from the beginning. Dr. Hawthorne, who'd helped Sophia heal. Reeves, who'd navigated the legal complexities. A few of Sophia's closest friends from school. And the three of us, the core family unit we'd somehow become. The dining room glowed with candlelight and fresh flowers. Sophia wore a burgundy dress she'd picked out herself, looking poised and happy in ways that would have been unimaginable 5 months ago. She laughed at Romano's terrible jokes and showed Dr. Hawthorne photos from track meets and discussed college ambitions with Reeves like someone who believed she had a future worth planning. When Teresa brought out the birthday cake, chocolate with raspberry filling because that was Sophia's favorite, we all gathered around singing off-key. Sophia closed her eyes over the candles, making wishes only she knew, and blew them all out in one breath. Speech, one of her friends called out, and others picked up the chant. Sophia stood, slightly embarrassed but willing. I don't really do speeches, but I want to thank everyone here for helping me get through the hardest time of my life. Dr. Hawthorne for teaching me coping strategies. Mr. Reeves for protecting my rights and making sure justice happened. Romano and Vincent for keeping us physically safe. Teresa for the best food and the occasional shoulder to cry on. She paused, looking at Luca and me. And Mia and Luca. For giving me a family when I needed one most. For never making me feel like a burden even when I was at my worst. For building a life where I can be normal again while still feeling protected. I love you both. Thank you for everything. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Luca stood and hugged Sophia, this casual display of affection that had become natural between them. I joined them, and for a moment we stood together. This chosen family built from crisis and love and determination. Later, after the guests had left and Sophia had gone upstairs to video chat with more friends, Luca and I stood on the terrace looking out at grounds that had witnessed so much of our journey. She's happy, I observed. Really, genuinely happy. She is. You both are. That's all I wanted. His arm came around my waist, pulling me close. I leaned into him, thinking about how far we'd come. 5 months ago, I'd knocked on this door at midnight with desperate courage, and no real plan beyond that moment. I'd been terrified, helpless, protecting my sister with nothing but hope and instinct. Now I stood here as an equal partner, as someone who'd rebuilt her life on her own terms while accepting help when needed. As a woman who'd found love with a complicated man and chosen it consciously, knowing all the difficulties it entailed. What are you thinking? Luca asked. That I'm grateful. For all of it. Even the hard parts. Because they brought us here. No regrets? Some. I regret that Sophia had to witness murder. That our lives were upended. That we needed rescue in the first place. But I don't regret knocking on your door. I don't regret staying. I don't regret choosing this life with you. He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face with familiar tenderness. I love you, Mia. More than I thought I could love anyone. You and Sophia. You're my family now. The most important thing I have. I love you too. Completely. Complications and all. We kissed under the stars, in the space where our journey had begun and where our future would unfold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The restaurant would need attention. Sophia would have homework that needed help. Life would continue in all its messy, beautiful complexity. But tonight, in this moment, everything felt exactly right. Sophia appeared in the doorway behind us. Are you two being romantic again? Because it's my birthday, and you're supposed to be paying attention to me. We laughed and went inside. Back to the warmth and light and the life we'd built together. Back to the family we'd chosen and fought for, and earned through courage and love and refusal to surrender to fear. 5 months ago, I'd knocked on a door at midnight seeking temporary shelter. What I'd found instead was permanent home. Not because of the mansion or the security or the material comfort, though those things mattered, but because I'd found people who saw me as more than someone needing rescue, who treated me as an equal partner, who built a life with me rather than for me. That midnight knock had been the most terrifying moment of my life. It had also been the beginning of everything that mattered now, and I wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that had brought us here. This was home. This was family. This was the life we'd built from desperation and determination and love that refused to be limited by circumstance, and it was more than I'd ever dared to hope for.